Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Everyone without exception, and everything without exception, yearns to be happy. Most important figures in our lives from the beginning is our parents. For the family of humanity, the most important and singular important point, context, relevance, and reference for happiness is the origin of creation, or our original parent. Our original parents, because God as an original singularity contained within himself to refer to him as God. Both the elements of the Father and the Mother. Both elements of the subjective principle and the objective principle. Both elements of the masculine principle and the feminine principle. Both elements of the positive principle, speaking in a valent sense of electricity, and negative principle, electricity, corresponding subjective with the objective. So the whole creation is groaning in travail, awaiting the revealing of the sons and daughters of God, the original Creator, as the center, heart, initiation, creative, co-creative love and appreciation, respect, gratitude, praise, to in loving and appreciating the truth and the beauty and the goodness of creation by our valuing, by our appreciation, by our gratitude, by our love and our praise of creation, directly, individualistically, on an individual basis, and on a collective, holistic basis. The whole creation, and thus God, finds happiness, finds that inclusive element of joy. So, and men and women, they have an original purpose of creation, each one unique, each one with unique characteristics. The relationship, dance and song of responsibility, relationship responsibility. It's a dance, it's a song of love, of truth, beauty, goodness as a result of that relationship. And the purpose is to generate that love, that joyful experience, process. So there's a growth process. You don't automatically become a dad or a mom. It's a process. The process of developing your understanding, your appreciation, your skill and ability to relate, to make bonds and connections that develop and grow over time. Your ability to resolve conflicts, seeming conflicts. So there's an original pattern of relationship. When you look at the entirety of the creation, there's patterns for harmony, patterns for success in relationships, generating future generations. And every element of the creation contributes to the propagation of flowers and trees, birds, bees, fishes, animals, human beings. Beings, sons and daughters of God, are the central element that appreciates this arboretum, this aquarium, this terrarium, this cosmology, this astronomical phenomenon that we call creation, that was brought into being for us to survive and thrive, for the Creator to experience His creation, their creation, through us as the body of God. Both men and women have dual elements within themselves. They have masculine and they have feminine. One is more predominant, one is more dominant characteristic than the women. There are anomalies. Many of those anomalies have emerged because of the physical environment, as in the pharmaceutical industry, the food industry, and also internal problems originating from the original fall. It's the story of the spiritual death and the original process of restoring our original nature in the fall of man. We have that original story in the Bible. So, but that original story could be 6,000 years, 6 million years, or 6 billion years. Time is irrelevant in the realm of the spirit. Space is irrelevant in the realm of the spirit. So the internal conflict was an original result of an immature defiance of a code or of a principle of relationship responsibility that originated with Lucifer the Archangel, or any representative in the mythologies of the world, or the histories of the world, they in this 12,500 year cycle, or the previous 120 million year cycle. The principle is the same. Either you're connected with the source and the origin of creation in your heart, in your thought, and in your behavior, your action. core, you're predominantly centered on yourself, material world, and only in immediate gratification, with no vision, no understanding of the past, and no vision for the future. We understand the past in the context of God's desire for every single one of His sons and daughters of God to be happy, to have they want a relationship with us, that we together can experience the joy and happiness of our existence, our being, our life, our love, our desire for happiness. It's only achieved through good relationships with our origin, with our parents, good relationships with our children, good relationships with the creation, good relationship between our mind and our body. So the central organ that connects heaven and earth and connects men and women is our mind. In our mind, our desire, and our body is our sexual organs. It said that our brain is our mind, our heart, are the primary sexual organs, and our physical sexual organs are the secondary sexual organs. They're perfectly suited for one another, concave and convex, to receive each other. One represents the one, the other represents the zero, or the circle of life, or the totality of everything. When they're connected, this is the union of the creator and the creation, the generation of life, the generation of existence. Because as soon as this unique singular sperm and a unique singular egg make that connection and life begins, life begins. A new timeline for growth, development, and engaging the environment, internally and externally. So I was just listening to a podcast with Jordan Peterson. He was talking about the Cain Able relationship. So the Cain Able relationship is that division between our fallen nature, self-seeking, materialistic, nearsighted, immediate gratification aspect, and the external connection with the entire world, connection with the source, harmony, and a desire to harmonize rather than a desire to control or to self-importance. Make no mistake, everyone and everything is important. That's important. But when you sacrifice love and respect for other people in the creation, for your own self-importance, then you're violating a fundamental original principle of love and happiness and respect and harmony and joy and peace in the world. So history is a process of those two elements of the Cain nature and the Able type nature. One's closer to God, one's farther away, of resolving their conflict and arriving at a holistic result that is the original nature that we were created with, and responsibility, ability to relate to our source, relate to our parents, relate to our children, relate to our creation. And so there's a time process. And in the same way that matter has three states: liquid, gas, and solid. Human beings have that same liquid, solid, and ultimately spiritual nature. However, the difference is that there's a living process of origin of being, the growth and development of the being in the physical form, so that we can interact holistically, spiritually, physically with God, our original parent, and with each other, developing our skill and understanding, our maturity of our relationships, so that there's no distinguishing. An example would be learning a skill with an athletic skill or any kind of technical skill, where it takes time to learn that skill, step-by-step process, and then fundamentally you go through experience and growth and development and training process, and then pretty soon you're not thinking about that, you're just naturally engaged at a certain level. So the fruit of that, our bodies were never meant to last forever. The physical body was never meant to last. It could last for a longer time, but in the interest of the restoration process, then generations were shortened, compressing time period for the whole of humanity. So everybody's going through an accelerated process. Now we're going through an even more accelerated process, where it's more like a hockey stick over the past 12,000 years. Not that much was passed on after the catastrophe 12,500 years ago. But all that original programming or nature, or things that we learned, things that we accomplished, the experiences that we went through in our previous generations, was recorded on our DNA. And if you want to be I don't want to say Darwinistic, because I think it's a misrepresentation of the physical process and development of species. In some sense, there's always an accelerated, energetic input into the system that innervates and energizes up to the next level, which I think our Creator is participating in. We are co-creators. So we have genetics and we have epigenetics. And our crude state of scientific understanding of life, the universe, and everything, we're just now beginning to understand that the DNA is a quantum computer. The primary influences on everything are not external. Primary influences are internal. Thinking, feeling, whatever experience you got. So whatever you think about what you're doing, or whatever you feel about what you're doing, determines the result. It's not the external reality. It's the internal context, reference, relationship to whatever's going on. It allows us to establish greater and greater foundations of response ability. So this is not only true for the individual contributes to the collective foundation. So, for example, Jesus came 2,000 years ago and established a foundation of a particular relationship with God as adopted sons and daughters as a foundation for Christ to return and establish the condition whereby we can, in our responsibility, realize being true, actual sons and daughters of God directly. With that responsibility, which can be compromised at any time according to each individual's responsibility, your ability to respond. So nobody can make you think or feel something. They can introduce something, an element that you respond to. Everyone has their own unique responsibility with their own thoughts and their own feelings and their own actions. So if you have one individual that's doing really good thinking, good feeling, good action or responsibility, and others start orbiting around them in an emulation, which the ideal framework for this, the ideal pattern for human relationships, is within the family. Every institution, every government, every company, every organization originally should be family-based. That we relate to each other as brothers and sisters, sons and daughters, parents and children, mothers and fathers, grandmothers, grandfathers, grandsons, grandchildren, cousins. Not even cousins or aunts and uncles. And we are more closely related than that because of our unique underlying foundational connection with the Creator and everything in the creation. But because of the fall, we fell into darkness. You can't see that, you can't feel that, and then coming up into, we can only know that on a certain level that we inherited from the fall. And you become, when we grow to that, beyond where we are today, into actual sons and daughters, lords and ladies, the heart of creation, the heart of God, is nothing different, it's the same. All the war, all the conflict, all the starvation, all the troubles of the world pass. So this too shall pass. So in the beginning, the process of restoration, first you have to have faith. You have to establish a standard of faith, confidence. Confidence in your situational awareness. How God is a part of that. How we are a part of the creation. How we are connected with our family. And how we're connected with all humanity. And there's different realms of that felt sense, that awareness. And to a certain time period, that foundation of faith, based on your foundation of faith, and based on your object position, with a superior subject position, say for instance a child with a parent, or humanity with God, as in Moses and God, then there becomes to a time period and an offering, or directly relating, making that direct connection. If you want a friend, you need to be a friend. So if you want to know God, you need to connect with God. If you want God to talk to you, you need to talk to God. Or I need to talk to God. If I want God to talk to me, I talk to God. Or I open and listen. So actually in a conversation, often listening is the precondition for good communication. So listening to what's going on around us, even listening to the heart of creation, or the environment, observing, being objective in all the senses, taking in that information, we can form a response, an educated response. It brings out the potential of the relationship. This process, there's a lot of pain, conflict, suffering, abuse, issues. It's messy. The history of restoring the original nature of human beings and their response and their relationship with the source, the creation, not just on this planet, but also with the whole universe and cosmos, begins on the internal and then it moves to the external. From God's point of view, and we inherit God's point of view as children, and observing the pattern of relationship within the whole of creation, from the mineral world, the physical world, to the living world, to what we've been able to gather and learn, all the different cultures, all the different religions, they're all part of the same body of humanity's search for truth, search for understanding, search to understand who we are, who God is, what the forces are that govern our lives and govern the energies of the creation, from the five elements to all the mythological pantheons of the various family groups around the world. Some are closer than others. The Hawaiian original tradition is probably one of the closest to God's original tradition. As a foundation. Because it doesn't teach that creation came just from that their parents. So even if there was, I mean, this is as an aside, for example, you can learn things from everyone. Good flat earthers. You know, the Democrats can learn from the Republicans can learn from the Democrats. Independents anarchists can learn from Christians. But the precursor is having an open mind, an open heart, and a desire. For growth and a desire to develop our skill, involvement, respect, and happiness and harmony. So all of the labels, if you name a thing, you give it power. So our names have power. Our names have an original value, and there's also a lot of historical baggage that comes with that. The sins of the fathers. 7 generations maybe to work out the worst of it. 7 generations to foster and develop virtue. And develop the original standard of love, respect, and goodness. And it's a cultivation, it's a growth, it's a care, it's a tending to, it's a responsibility. That your ability to respond determines the quality and scope of the outcome. So in this process, we have a lot of bright lights in humanity. Anyone listening to this talk, there's bright lights around you. There's always someone above and always someone below, someone to the left, someone to the right, someone in front, and someone behind. And in all coordinates of your sphere of awareness and relationships and environment. So seeking to support that through recognition and also through an observation, inherent, see, and to grow. This is what nourishment is, spiritually. The more detailed explanation that provided a foundation for this particular report, sharing, comes through the divine principle from Reverend Sunday. Finding the 1996 edition is the best edition. They have a 3-color variety, which is basically the salient points a little bit more expansion. Then the third color has even more expansion, and then the whole thing, 411 points. 411 pages. It's the 411. The OG 411. So all of this that I've shared with you is being reflected in the geopolitical, World Economic Forum, the UN, Cain type propositions, the geopolitical sphere is in consideration for a disrespect for humanity, considering humans as only being resources. Really, really old school. Pre-Old Testament. No consideration for life. No respect for life. And there's all kinds of full spectrum of saints to sinners is around us all the time. But in our love for God and our love for humanity and our love for the creation, our love for each other, the more we engage in active relationships that reflect that love and respect, then the more that will develop and grow throughout your family, throughout your community, throughout your city, throughout your county, throughout your state, throughout your country, and the world family of nations, and the world family of pieces of people. We're not raised. It's not a race. We're a species with variations. Very beautiful variations. That's being influenced and degraded due to fallen nature, not our original nature. Survival of the fittest is not an original nature. Love and care for your family, love and care for the nature around you, love and care for other people, that's original nature. Desire for happiness, that's an original nature. At the expense of other people, not an original nature. By supporting other people, caring for other people, you connect yourself with God's happiness, the highest possible scope of happiness. With happiness, that sort of engaged activity, your mind, as you think, as you feel, the will follows, and stuff happens. Bad things happen, and sometimes you need to think, I need to reflect internally. What does that mean to me in the context of my life? At the same time, what does that mean in the context of the whole, and how can I redirect it? How can I rethink it? How can I change my heart and attitude? Attitude is a very interesting word, because in the physical sense and the spatial sense, it means where you are in relationship to things. It's like your attitude. What's the attitude between the earth and the sun? And the changing of the attitude of the earth around the sun will change the environment of the sun. And it's the same thing with us. As we shift our attitude, rethink. Repent is like a shortened, as Pastor Sean says, poimino means to rethink. rethink again, reflect about behavior and result, behavior and consequence. So that improves our responsibility, our ability to respond to the circumstances, internally and externally, individually and as a whole. There's a lot of things that can be easily changed, understanding these fundamental truths. And the U.S. Constitution is the highest document, the Declaration of Independence. Those two documents in the history of humanity are probably, as far as from a materialistic point of view, the highest standard documents thus far, but internally there are higher documents, higher standards. They form a central line. Of responsibility, which determines our happiness and well-being. Higher standard, raise the standard of good. So, I guess I'll shift right now and conclude with thank you for listening. Thank you for all that you do out there. Thank you for all the good things that we're doing and everything that leads up to raising the standard of family, of man's maturity and responsibility, of love, of goodness and beauty, and co-creation. We do things, develop our technologies and develop our external technologies, but also develop our internal technologies as well. Not neglect internal use. Internal. With that, I wish you Godspeed, God bless, you and your families, all the creation. Thank you, Heavenly Father.